Hello and welcome back to Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger. The date is November 12th, 2020. Last week we had a new kitten joining the family, and he has been, for the most part, a very good little boy, but he has a rather annoying tendency to want to gnaw the hell out of things, most particularly my hands. So I'm picking up a lot of scratches and nicks on my hands and my arms from his sharp little claws and sharp little baby teeth. And that made me think of one of the videos that we've done a while ago. The video about one of the characters that I am still in search of a proper version of. The character, otherwise known as the Sabertooth. Now this Sabertooth you are seeing in front of the screen, we've already showcased him in the last video, but I'm just using him as a placeholder. Sabertooth is one of those characters that, on the surface, seems very generic and boring. You know, he's a big, brutish kind of guy, blonde hair, sharp teeth. He's obviously a mutant, so he's got some inhuman features such as super sharp claws, superhuman reflex, superhuman strength, and keen animal senses, and just all around very brutal fighter. But he's also Canadian, and that kind of adds to my attraction to the character. Of course, the whole Sabretooth thing just attract me to the character as well. Being Johnny Tiger, I can't help but being attracted to any character that kind of have a big cat thing going on. And you don't get much bigger than a Sabretooth cat. But that, as we mentioned before, was the sore point in my pursuit for a perfect Sabretooth action figure. The old one that I got in the 90s was okay for his time, but honestly, too small, too short. And the new one, made in middle of around 2005, I believe, the one that you're seeing on screen right now, was marginally bigger than the old one, but because every other action figure has gotten bigger as well, he's still too small. Let me bring in someone who Sabertooth hang out with quite often and do a size comparison to refresh your memory. And for those who haven't seen that episode, you know what I'm talking about. This is possibly the most iconic villain in Marvel Universe and the whole X-Men universe. Another one of my favorite characters, his name is Magneto. We'll probably do a special episode on Magneto later, so I'm not going to go into too much details on why I like this guy. But, you know, he's got a fancy, cool looking cape, and he's one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. And he has an all around interesting design. But since we're not here to talk about Magneto today, I'm going to put a break on this one. We're just using Magneto here for a size comparison because if you watch the X-Men movie, you would have remembered that Sabertooth worked for Magneto. Sabertooth was one of Magneto's henchmen. And then later on in the comic book, in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, where Magneto became actually one of the good guys, the leader of the good guys, Sabretooth became one of the good guys and again worked for Magneto. So you can kind of see that Sabretooth and Magneto kind of goes hand in hand quite often. Sabretooth is to Magneto is the Beastman to Skeletor, or the Slide to Mom Ra in Thundercat, or the Rocksteady to Shredder in Ninja Turtle. You get my drift. I mean, Sabretooth is a lot cooler than those other henchmen, but you get my drift. Sabretooth is this big hulking guy that basically hangs out with Magneto, and whoever Magneto wants to tear apart, or if there's any heavy lifting to be done, Sabretooth is the guy he sent to do the heavy lifting. Of course, Magneto himself is no lightweight when it comes to powerful displays of strength, but again, as far as muscle power goes, he usually defers that to his henchman, Sabretooth. So, all this is to say, when you see Sabretooth on screen, he's supposed to be bigger than Magneto. And not just like a little bigger, he's supposed to be a lot bigger than Magneto. But if you look at these two figures, this Magneto on the screen was made in 2002, I believe, and then comparing him to this Sabretooth that was made around 2005, 2006, you can tell that they're about the same size. I mean, Sabretooth definitely looks like he got a little bit more muscle, he's a little bit bulkier, but overall, if we stand them together like this, you wouldn't necessarily say one's bigger than the other. Actually, if we stand them back to back, they're about the same height. So that's problematic, because Sabretooth shouldn't be the same size as Magneto. No. Sabretooth is supposed to be someone who looms in the background, someone who has a towering presence, that big hulking brute that you can look over your shoulder and say, hey, go tear someone up, and then he's supposed to go do it. So when Sabretooth is roughly the same size as Magneto, we know there's something really, really wrong. And as I said in the last Sabretooth episode, for years and years, I looked and looked for the perfect Sabretooth. So after I made the last episode, I again, because making that episode sort of reminds me to go do a quick search on Amazon and eBay and all my usual stomping ground for action figures, looking for that perfect Sabretooth. And even though I still don't think I have the perfect Sabretooth, I think I got something that really, really close to that. A lot closer to this Sabretooth on the screen. And we're going to look at him right now. That is Sabretooth made by Diamond Select in the Marvel Select line of action figures. It is portraying Sabretooth at his first appearance in comic book. So he looks a little bit different, but just on sheer size alone, this is how a Sabretooth figure is supposed to be. I'm going to move him in a little bit closer. Look at that sheer presence of this figure. He's not like Incredible Hulk. He's nowhere as big as Incredible Hulk. But I'm going to bring the old Sabretooth in here, stand them together, and right away, you can't even tell that's the same character. It's like a whole head taller, almost a whole head and shoulder taller than the old Sabretooth. And just look at the comparison of their arm and their bulk. The old one looked like a child Sabretooth. Now, most action figure collectors figured this one out. If you like to play with your action figures, if you like your action figures to have a lot of joints and articulation, and still relatively cheap, you want to go with the Marvel Legends line, originally by Toy Biz and then now taken over by Hasbro. Hasbro, incidentally, is the company that produced action figures for Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers. So, if you want something relatively cheap and you can play with it, it has a lot of joints, you want to go with Marvel Legends. But if you want something that looks really good, it's a little bit more expensive, but something that looks a lot better, but doesn't have as many joints. It's a little bit more statuesque. Then you go with Marvel Select, produced by Diamond Select, and that's where I got this Sabertooth from. So it's produced by Diamond Select. Now he is quite expensive. I found him on Amazon for about and paid about $59 for him. A lot more than what he cost when he first came out. When this one was released, I believe in 2009, and back then I think you could get him for like 22 bucks, 25 bucks. So I paid over twice as much for this one because he's actually really rare, really hard to find now, and he's also kind of an exclusive action figure. But just to have somewhat of a more perfect Sabertooth in my collection, I bit the bullet and made the purchase. So what do I think? Well, I definitely think this is a lot more like it. I mean, this is one heavy chunk of plastic. Look at that, those ferocious claws on his hand. These are actually quite sharp. And look at that, those wicked looking teeth that displaying in his mouth. He has big bunch of fur around his collar, the collar of his suit, his arms, and his leg. And he is so muscular that he kind of hunched over a little bit. Just look at the muscles on his back. Incredible. The muscular detail on this guy is incredible. Now, he is not as articulated as the other one. Like I said, these look good, but they are not super articulated. But he has enough articulation to do a few things. His head can nod up and down, turn left and right. His torso can turn left and right. Unfortunately, there's no forward or back crunching motion like the other one. His shoulder goes in. Oh, this is a really tight joint. In and out, up and down. Elbows turn and flex. I gotta be careful. I don't want to break this. It's a kind of a 10-year-old figure after all. We don't want to go too rough on the joint. Wrist rotate. Ow! I just got injured by his claw. His hips go in and out and forward and back. Knees turn, move in and out. Ankles flex and rotate. Not as articulated as the other figure, but really, considering Sabertooth's main function is to stand around looking intimidating and ready to tear someone apart, that's good enough for this guy. Partly justifying the higher price tag is this more intricate display base he comes with. It's like a section of floor in an industrial complex with a grinding wheel, I think this is, and a little bent out of shape sign on the ground, and a few pieces of these mechanical hinges and things that can come off the base. And this base can support him very nicely. Why do I say that this is still not the perfect Sabretooth? Well, because now he's too big. I know, I'm hard to please. But let me explain this. Let's bring Magneto back in the frame. He's fast. Sabretooth is fast. So, as you can see, this Sabretooth looms over Magneto, no problem, which is good. But if you look at the official biography of Sabretooth, Sabretooth is 6 feet 6 inches tall, while Magneto is 6'2". So while Sabretooth should be taller, he shouldn't be a whole head taller. I mean, if you go by this comparison here, this Sabretooth looks like he's a foot taller than Magneto, which is, yeah, definitely too big. And look at how giant his claw is. Like his hand, one of his hands is bigger than Magneto's entire head and helmet. Like, wow, that's one big dude. Honestly, that is my only complaint of this one. However, I will say, when it comes to a character, a giant brute of a character like Sabretooth, I rather have him slightly too big than too small. A little bit too big, half an inch or so too big, I can live with that. I mean, honestly, when you get them on the display, unless you stand them close to each other, most likely people won't be able to tell that something wacky with the scale. And if you stand them a foot apart, then they'll look about right. Like if I separate them like this, then I imagine the scale looks a lot more pleasing to the eye, not so obvious. Also, if you look at how Sabretooth always portrayed in the cartoon and in the movies, he's always portrayed as this giant of a man. Definitely seems a lot bigger than someone who's only 6'6". I mean, I'm standing here saying only 6'6", while I myself is only 5'9". So to me, 6'6" should be like a giant. But you know, I've had enough encounters with people who are 6'6", 6'7". I fought them, trained with them, I trained them, I worked out with them, worked with them. So to me, 6'6" is not does not bring to mind that impressive presence that we experience from Sabretooth on the screen. Now, of course, there is an explanation. Whoa, Sabretooth just fell off the counter. Luckily, he's quite sturdy. Now, there is an explanation why Sabretooth on the screen might look a lot bigger than his official height of 6'6". If you look at the kind of character that Sabretooth usually is fighting, he's usually fighting guys like Wolverine. And Wolverine is like 5'4", 5'3". So I imagine when you see a 6'6" guy fighting someone who's 5'3", 5'4", there's enough of a contrast that makes a 6'6" guy seem like a giant. Also, Sabretooth is known to hang out with other smaller characters. When he's with Magneto, he's usually with small guys like Toad, who's again like 5 foot something tall, and Mystique, a tiny little woman. So he kind of is known to show up around smaller characters. So I think that is where the discrepancy is when it comes to the size of Sabretooth. Why on his official bio, he's a very normal 6'6", but on the screen, he looks like he might be 8 feet tall. But no matter how you prefer your Sabretooth, I'm very happy to finally get one that can hang out with my modern collection and properly tower over people he's supposed to tower over and look intimidating on the shelf like a Sabretooth supposed to. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Fitness Friday. For now, have a good night.